In the pre-dawn hours of September 5th, 1891, a small Midwestern town became the scene of a bizarre and frightening apparition. Around 2 o'clock in the morning in Crawfordsville, Indiana, 2 ice delivery men were getting ready for the day's work. But suddenly, they were struck with awe and dread as they looked up into the sky and saw a horrible apparition looming above. This strange airborne entity hovered 300 to 400 feet above them. It also apparently featured a red eye. What these men had witnessed that night would set the stage for one of the most fantastic natural phenomenon sightings of the 19th century that would soon grip the town of Crawfordsville, Indiana with a mix of wonder, fear, and fascination. This story, it gets me. I love local small town lore like this. Like, oh, we had a monster show up here in 1891. It was wild. You know, people telling their kin. I love this kind of stuff. So who were these ice delivery men? Well, they were Marshall McIntyre and Bill Gray. And after they had witnessed this strange thing in the sky, they went straight to the local newspaper, the Crawfordsville Indiana Journal. That morning, the Crawfordsville Journal posted an article titled "A Strange Phenomenon," and it described the airborne monster like this. A horrible apparition hovers over the city at an early hour this morning. It was about 300 or 400 feet in the air and most gruesome in aspect. It was about 18 feet long and 8 feet wide and moved rapidly through the air by means of several pairs of side fins. It was pure white and had no definite shape or form. There was no tail or head visible, but there was one great flaming eye. The great flaming red eye was described as being the most frightening part of this apparition. It also apparently made a strange wheezing sound, even though there was no mouth to be seen on this monster. They described the movement like a flag flapping in the wind. They would actually watch this strange apparition for over an hour before they got too scared and decided to hide in a barn. Now, you might be like, oh, okay, this is some weird made-up hoax from 1891. These 2 farmer ice delivery dudes were clearly just bored and made up this weird hoax. Look, I would completely agree with you. There's just one issue. They weren't the only ones to witness the flying monster. But before we get to that, you know what I love? Cereal. When I was a kid, cereal used to be the highlight of my morning. I'd look at the box, I'd eat the cereal. It was super good. But as I've grown up, I've kind of realized that those cereals of my childhood weren't exactly good for me, and they weren't exactly fueling me for my day. Thankfully, there's today's video sponsor, Magic Spoon. Magic Spoon has taken that same great taste we all grew up with and completely reinvented it with grown-up ingredients. Their cereal has 13 to 14 grams of protein per serving, 0 grams of sugar, and 4 to 5 grams of net carbs. That means it actually fuels me and still tastes good like it did in my childhood. I'll be honest, I film and edit for hours at a time, and often I need something quick, something that can boost my energy, and grabbing a bowl of this cereal is perfect. And when I'm on the go, I love their Magic Spoon treats. They're crispy and crunchy with 11 grams of protein, 1 gram of sugar, and 1 to 2 grams of net carbs per bar. Basically, it's the protein boost I need without feeling like I'm eating some gross, sticky, icky, chewy protein bar. And here's the best part. You can try Magic Spoon today and get $5 off your order just by using my code SWEGGLE at checkout. That's SWEGLE at checkout, or you can click the link in the description, magicspoon.com/sweggle. You can even scan this QR code right here. Oh, by the way, Magic Spoon is so confident you'll love it, they back every order with 100% happiness guarantee. So that means that if you don't like it for any reason, they'll refund you. No questions asked. Honestly, it's a no-brainer. You might as well try it. So hit the link in the description or use my code SWEGGLE at checkout and upgrade your cereal game today. Thank you so much to Magic Spoon for sponsoring the video. So earlier in the night, well before the 2 ice delivery men saw this apparition in the sky, it was actually seen by someone else. And that person was Reverend G.W. Switzer, pastor of the Crawfordsville First Methodist Church. Stepping outside of his house around midnight to get a drink from the well, he was astonished to see this flying apparition in the sky. Similar to the ice delivery men, he visited the Crawfordsville Journal to tell his story. His account was part of an article titled, "Mr. Switzer Saw the Spook." The Spook. It already has a name. It's kind of a creepy name too, the Spook. The article stated this: It seems that Marshall McIntyre and Bill Gray were not the only witnesses of the mysterious apparition which hovered over the city from midnight on Friday till the dawn of Saturday morning. Several others witnessed the ghostly visitor and were also completely mystified, both by its appearance and actions. Reverend G.W. Switzer of the Methodist Church saw it, and his story is rather interesting. As he stood there, a strange, weird sensation crept over him, And although he is unable to say whether he was attracted by any sound or not, he suddenly felt his attention drawn upward. What he saw both puzzled and astonished him. He said the floating apparition was shaped like a fleecy milk white cloud, or like a demon in a shroud. It was much too low to be a cloud and moved far too swiftly. Besides, there was no wind at all. It seemed to work about us as it swam through the air in a whirling, twisting manner similar to that of some serpents. The movements of this monster were apparently very similar to a snake. Kind of reminds me of that. Do you remember that Ocarina of Time, Legend of Zelda? Do you know what I'm talking about? That one boss that's like a flying serpent? Kind of reminds me of that. Anyway, you guys probably have no idea what I'm talking about. Of course, you don't want to be the only person to observe such a weird phenomenon, so Reverend Switzer quickly woke up his wife. They both went outside and they took a look at the strange apparition above. Now, according to the wife, sometimes this flying serpent monster thing would land in the neighbor's yard behind the church. Like the ice haulers, both the Reverend and his wife were pretty astonished at what they had seen. Although, unlike the ice haulers, they just got bored. They weren't really scared of it. They're like, okay, this thing's been flying around for an hour. Let's go to bed. So if we look at our little roadmap of what's going on, you have the two ice delivery men, you have the Reverend and his wife, but there were actually several other individuals who had claimed to see this monster that night. A lot of people saw it, and the news of the spook spread like wildfire throughout the community. By September 6th and September 7th, the story had spread and been picked up by other larger cities like the Indianapolis Journal. Soon there were newspapers all over the country that were talking about this strange flying apparition. Here's an example from the Brooklyn Daily Eagle. This article was titled, "A Substitute for the Sea Serpent." The article starts off being doubtful of the two icemen. It talks about how the air above the ice house was probably cold and it created some weird fog in the sky. But then halfway through the article it's like, but hold on a second, this apparition was seen by a religious man. And you gotta trust a religious man. Practically overnight, this quiet little town in Indiana found itself at the center of a media frenzy. Curious outsiders, newsmen from around the country, all descended on the town. The local postmaster in Crawfordsville, Indiana, received tons and tons and tons of mail from outsiders who were really intrigued about this event. And of course, you definitely had your skeptics. A lot of people were like, y'all, you guys are ridiculous. There's no flying dragon, monster, serpent apparition in the air. In fact, Professor Robert Burton gave his opinion that it was a delusion, which got on the optic nerve of those men who had probably been inhibiting intoxicants. But then again, you did have a lot of people who were genuinely concerned. I mean, this was 1891. They didn't know a lot about a lot of things. They didn't have evidence. They didn't have cameras. So many people were really freaking out. For this reason, once nightfall hit, a lot of people decided to stay up to see if the flying monster would return for a second night. So did it? On the second night, September 6th, hundreds of families and individuals stayed up to see if this apparition would return. And apparently, around 2 a.m., it came back. The creature was described as being very similar to the one seen on the first night. It had lots of little tiny fins, and again, it had that scary-looking red eye. Some residents even claimed that they could feel the breath of this serpent monster as it swooped down towards them. The fact that it apparently came back for a second time the next night further fueled this legend. And this event, even to this day, still has an eerie reputation for the folks of Crawfordsville, Indiana. In a span of just a few days, Crawfordsville mysterious visitor had become both a source of hometown infamy and a national curiosity. Okay, now, I'm of course not one to believe that there was a flying monster, serpent, dragon thing, phantom apparition in the air. But with that said, clearly something happened. I mean, on the first night, you had lots of people who were, I don't know if something happened on the second night. We'll talk about that later. But on the first night, there were several eyewitnesses. And whatever they saw was apparently enough to convince them that it was a creature of sorts. So what was it? Well, we're going to try to solve this. Was it a strange weather phenomenon? Was it a natural phenomenon that we have, that's just extremely rare that we haven't seen since? Was it some sort of flying animal? Let's start with weather. Could it have been a cloud? Probably not. First of all, it was too low. I mean, clouds are pretty high up, and if they're super low, they tend to be more foggy. Now, maybe fog did play a factor. We'll talk about that later. But overall, it probably wasn't a low-hanging cloud. I will say, though, there are two cloud-like phenomena that could kind of look like a snake. One of them you're probably very familiar with if you watch this channel, and that is a tornado. In the dark, perhaps a rope tornado vortex could look like a flying serpent in the sky. Like, take a look at this video right here. This is a rope tornado. This is technically a water spout, but look at its crazy serpent-like motion. Yeah, in the dark, that could definitely look like a dragon monster flying in the sky above. In fact, in medieval times, there are several accounts of tornadoes that were described as being dragon tails or snakes in the sky. They didn't know what was going on. This was medieval Europe. They didn't know what, supercells were or anything like that. So they thought, oh wow, this is seriously some crazy sky monster. And rope tornadoes can look really insane. Like, take a look at this image of a girl standing in front of a tornado in Nebraska in the 1980s. I mean, that is wild. And if you were underneath that column, if you're underneath that, that'd be terrifying. But it definitely was not a tornado. I don't want to get too much into this theory because there's no way it was a tornado. First of all, it lasted for over an hour. Tornadoes tend to move. Even though they can last over an hour, they tend to move away. They don't just stay in one area. Second of all, there was no damage. Third of all, by 1891, people knew what tornadoes were, especially in Indiana. So definitely not a tornado. The other vortex it could have been was a horseshoe vortex. This is a similar kind of tornado thing in the sky that's pretty rare, actually. But it probably wasn't that, because these tend to occur pretty high up. And also, they would last for less than an hour. So it wasn't a tornado. Well, what other theories could kind of fit this strange description of a sky monster? It could have been maybe a hot air balloon. Which sounds crazy, but hear me out. Technically, this theory does connect a lot of dots. Now, I'm not totally convinced, but apparently some people believe that this could have been a hot air balloon or like a little mini Zeppelin situation above Crawfordsville, Indiana. It kind of explains the red eye thing too, because hot air balloons have that, that heat source that is red. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know much about ballooning, as they call it, but maybe that explains the red eye. And it also kind of explains the weird hissing noise, because you go if you're in the hot air balloon. Interesting, huh? So if you had some fog and it goes up, because sometimes fog forms in the morning, and you have a little white Zeppelin thing in the sky with a little hot air thing, that could maybe look like a monster. And I know it sounds a little far-fetched, but hold on a second. Check this out. This article right here was featured in the Wichita Eagle newspaper one day before the sighting. One day before the sighting. September 4th. The article is on page 2. It states this: boys in Crawfordsville, Indiana have a balloon parachute craze, and cats are daily sent up, the parachute being so arranged that it will detach itself from the balloon at a certain time. The cats are not taking kindly to this aeronautic mania. Kids back in the day they were wild. That was one day before the incident. I mean, what are the odds that one day before the incident you have some sort of kids messing around with balloons? Kind of interesting. Okay, but there's actually one theory that is much more favorable compared to the rest, and this is the main theory. This is the theory that most skeptics believe. They believe that the Crawfordsville, Indiana monster of 1891 was actually just a flock of birds. Boo! Lame! Lame! Birds? Are you kidding me? But it kind of makes sense. So I don't know if you knew this, but birds like to flock together in weird, kind of uniformed shapes. You know how like fish sometimes do those little shapes? Well, birds do it too, and it's called murmuration. The specific bird that they think caused this strange apparition was the killdeer, and their white underbellies apparently explain why this apparition was white. The wings also explain the fins of the monster. Check out these videos featuring murmurations of starlings. Notice how they kind of almost explain the Crawfordsville, Indiana monster perfectly. The way it shifts and flows and murmurs around. This theory came out right away. In fact, it came out the next night. Two men, John Hornbeck and Abe Hernley, found it upon themselves to investigate. So they went out on the next evening, listened to reports of people who apparently saw the monster, and then they followed it around, and then when they found it, they stated it was a flock of birds. This was 1891, so this was close to the turn of the century. Electricity was new and hot at this time, and I guess around that time they had actually installed a bunch of electrical lights throughout the town, and this confused all the killdeer, and they went crazy in the sky above, and they were, all erratic, but they were still kind of together, making this strange, motion like a monster. And because of mass hysteria, the townsfolk of Crawfordsville, Indiana, believed it to be some actual monster, and it has just become a piece of folklore ever since. Okay, so what about the second night? The sightings that came on the second night that hundreds of people saw. What's up with that? Well, there's really not much information on that. There's actually just one article. It was written by Vincent Gaddis, who is known for being a paranormal writer. He actually came up with the term Bermuda Triangle. Apparently, decades later, he interviewed a bunch of the older generations about the event, and they said that they, on the second night, saw it again. And I don't know if the article's 100% true. It's dubious at best. And even if it is true, even if these old people were like, oh yeah, I saw it. I mean, of course you're going to say that. If you're from Crawfordsville, Indiana, and your town has been known to have this strange apparition overhead one night back in the day, you don't want to be the one person in the town who didn't see it. So of course you're going to be like, oh, I saw it. We all saw it. It was horrible. You know what I mean? Of course, nothing is really quite clear-cut with this strange case of the Crawfordsville, Indiana monster of 1891. I mean, why did they have that weird feeling before both the ice delivery men and the Reverend said they had this weird, eerie feeling inside of them before they saw this monster? I don't know if the article just added that for some flair, maybe, but I mean, not everything really makes sense. Also, birds, I feel like if they had seen it the first night, they probably would have known it was birds. And also, flocks of birds don't just stay in one area for over an hour. At least I don't think they do. Maybe they do. I don't know. Also, killdeer birds are not known to murmurate. They're not known to flock at all. In fact, the only birds that are really known to murmurate like this are starlings. So that doesn't really make sense either. Of course, the theory is that the electrical lights were causing them to be all crazy. And maybe it was just a swarm of birds above the town. And also the red eye part of the story. I don't know if a flock of birds really explains the red eye that everyone was seeing. So I don't know about that part. I think it was a balloon. You know what? I don't care if all the skeptics think it was a flock of killdeer. I think it was a weird looking balloon. And I think it was some hooligans in the town that were up to this hoax. Because, I mean, what's up with the article? I mean, that's crazy that there was kids messing with balloons, sending cats up into the sky. I think it was a balloon. Either way, that concludes today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on the Crawfordsville, Indiana monster. Do you think it was a flock of birds? Do you think it was a tornado? Or do you think it was maybe an actual scary monster and that the town is actually cursed and that the town needs to repent? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.